Borderlands. Wait, Wonderlands now, right? What happens when Wonderlands 2 comes out? Are we going to call that Borderlands 5? Anyways, Wonderlands, a game coming to consoles near you in about 1 month, and it's about time to talk about all the things we loved about Borderlands 3 and what we want to see out of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Now, I know Borderlands 3 is rough around the edges, and you guys all saw my last video about the game, definitely going a little too deep on this topic, and honestly what turns out to be an awesome 40-minute rant in all the areas that Borderlands 3 needed some improvement. But what can I say? I can't stay away forever. There's just certain things about mayhem and explosions, Torg, Zane. Like I said, I just can't stay away forever. I'll probably be trying out Wonderland so I can test out all the crazy interactions and showcase them to you guys right here on this channel. So be sure to like the video and subscribe. But since there's a full month before that game comes out, let's go ahead and talk about all the things we loved about Borderlands 3 and what we want to see them deliver on in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Also, before we get into this video is actually sponsored by Magic Spoon cereal, and about halfway through I'll be filling you guys in on this delicious and healthy cereal that adults can also enjoy. So let's get into it. So Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a pretty highly anticipated game. Many people are hoping they deliver on more mayhem and more loot than ever before, as well as some new gameplay mechanics that don't exist in the current worlds they've already built. Speaking of being on another world, since we aren't really going to be governed by the rules of Pandora anymore, Wonderlands is taking place in a fantasy realm. The stakes will basically just be raised of what is possible and what kind of game mechanics will be justified in using in the new fantasy looter shooter. So what better way to prepare ourselves for the endless possibilities by talking about number 5 on my list, which is their absolute willingness to try anything. And by they, I mean Gearbox. Gearbox's absolute willingness to try anything. And that's kind of a weird little title card, so let me explain exactly what I mean. I think Borderlands 3 was a pretty big experiment for Gearbox to see what they could get away with putting inside of a Borderlands game. And they definitely wanted to test the limits of what the player base enjoyed and also what they wanted to artistically create. I think this is fairly obvious, honestly, in many of the decisions they made. Considering early on, they directly spoke on and went against many expectations, like not including any DLC characters or standalone raid bosses until Hermivorous came out, but instead giving existing characters DLC skill trees and creating takedowns instead of standalone raid bosses. Another example of this is some of the wacky events like the Halloween and Valentine's event with the floating skulls and hearts. This hasn't really been seen before. And Mayhem 2.0, which of course we love to talk about. And Arms Race, which is a roguelike experience that once again is something else rough around the edges. But it's a pretty great idea in an arsenal of gameplay experiences that Borderlands is ready to give you. Now, the reason why I love this so much, their willingness to try anything, is because Borderlands is just free to be anything at once. And we get to try out some insane game modes I think would never have been able to exist in many other titles in the looter shooter genre. Like, for example, what self-respecting AAA game title adds the floor is lava game mode to their looter shooter video game? Anyone? No? Only Gearbox and Borderlands? And to be honest with you guys, even though this game mode kind of doesn't work and it's a little bit annoying to deal with, I still respect the shit out of them for doing it. I mean, now we know what a good and bad mayhem system looks like. Of course, with the Wonderlands universe taking place as a fantasy board game, I really think they will continue to stretch the limits of what gamers are used to playing. The amount of customization will be something to look forward to for sure. And yeah, that's number 5. So coming in at number 4 is the gunplay in Borderlands 3. Now, to be honest with you all, as the audience, I would have put this higher on the list, but I wanted a reason to include some Hellwalker and King's Call gameplay way sooner in the video. The gunplay in Borderlands 3 is like none other. Jacobs, ricochets, Tunguska explosions, recursion, melting your PC and red ringing Xbox 360s, the Super Shred-a-Fire. There's so many different guns to enjoy in Borderlands 3. Obviously, this is the series known for having a million different gun combinations, and this is kind of a cliche thing to add to the list, but they did such a great job in stepping it up from previous games. I cannot wait to see the magical twist that each manufacturer will get in the fantasy realm. Torg, Vladoff, Maliwan, Jacob, COV, or it'll probably turn back into Bandit. Dahl, Tedior. What kind of magical properties do you think they could add to each of these manufacturers? Post it in the comments down below. Seriously though, shooting any Jacob's weapon in a Borderlands game is one of the most amazing things to do. They're snipers, they're pistols, and why would I even say shotguns? Really what I mean is the Hellwalker, with the ricochets that go off of it, watching how it goes through Zane's barrier when it gets that amp glow to it. And real quick, let me edit in here a boop, or whatever noise the Plague Bearer makes as it shoots off in slow motion. Every gun in this game is unique, and it gives everyone an option to choose their favorite one. Now, before we get into number 3, we're gonna take that quick sponsored break for Magic Spoon. This video is brought to you by Magic Spoon, a healthy cereal inspired by Saturday morning cartoons filled with all your favorite cereals. But you won't believe that this one is actually good for you. To be exact, this cereal has 0 grams of sugar, about 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, with 140 calories per serving as well. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and like I mentioned, low carb. I also wanted to say, Magic Spoon actually sent me like 8 boxes of this stuff, 2 of each flavor, and within the first 2 days of getting this cereal, I crushed like 4 of the boxes. So that should prove to you guys that it passed the munchie test because it was so delicious and addictive, but it's actually very healthy for you, which I'm interested in living a healthy lifestyle, and I know a lot of you are out there as well, and being able to eat delicious foods that you love. So click the link in the description below to grab a variety pack and try it today, and be sure to use promo code ThickFillet at checkout to get $5 off your order, or go to magicspoon.com/thickfillet. Also, they are so confident in their product, they're backed with a 100% happiness guarantee, so if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So click the link below and use code ThickFillet for $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/thickfillet to save $5 today. Now, coming in at the number 3 thing I love about Borderlands 3, it's the world depth and the lore. Not only adding new stories in the base game, as well as just being such a huge game between all the guns, the skill trees, customizations for characters, but also expanding the universe with all the new planets and territories that you can experience and visit, but also some of the cool lore behind the world itself, like expanding on the Siren mythology with some of the Nereid logs, or some of the cool naming behind the takedowns, like the Maliwan takedown had Wotan, the Valkyries, and the Kraken. The whole Maliwan takedown naming was inspired by Norse mythology. And the Guardian takedown, plus the other Guardian boss from DLC 6, they were named Anathema, Scourge, and the Seer. 2 bosses named after items in Greek mythology, Anathema and Scourge. Anathema being named as like a ceremonial type of thing, and Scourge being named after the whip, which the Greeks loved using their whips and their crucifixions and whatnot. But also the Seer, the Siren boss, or the Guardian boss from DLC 6. That is a person who can tell the future in Greek mythology, is a seer. Now, of course, there's much more to the takedowns as well that you can probably find out there, like some sort of Easter eggs or mythology that are very interesting. But even the story that they added in this game of the 7th Siren, and wondering who the next Sirens will be in Borderlands 4, it's all very compelling and very entertaining. Now, obviously this video isn't going to break down all the lore in Borderlands because this could turn into hours of content, so go check out a fellow YouTuber named Eruption Fang, another channel who does actually just break down lore of different video games if you want to see more. But yeah, also the depth of each DLC adding its own flavor to the game, the sheer amount of customizations in Borderlands 3 is amazing. I mean, I already know this is obviously going to be included in Wonderlands. Some of the sneak peeks they've already given have shown the game is all about customization and stuff like that, and hopefully we get to see some new awesome experiences. But I think Gearbox does a great job of creating an entire comprehensive universe that has many different moving parts, and many of these different parts fit together with many other different parts in many different ways, and finding all those different combinations is what makes Borderlands special for every different person who plays it. I remember early on, they even mentioned BL3 was meant to open up the universe of Borderlands. being a multi-planet map instead of just taking place on Pandora, and future Borderlands titles will have much to go off of in the past Borderlands games when they're going to be building more of these stories on top of each other. Coming in at number 2, I'm just going to say it, this one is all about the love of Zane in Borderlands 3. I'm honestly upset I can't ask for more playable Zane in future games. We can only hope for cameos from him in Borderlands 4. I swear, Zane better be as prominent as Brick and Morty. I want him leading like his whole part of the main story quests, kind of like Brick and Morty do. But hey, you know, you can only ask for so much. Maybe he'll show up in Borderlands 4 and he'll give you bounty board quests like the Zero bounty board. Honestly, I'd be okay with that too. Or maybe he could be the next character to narrate Arms Race while I'm playing it. You couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo. Best voice line in the game because it includes cows, by the way. But also, can we talk about how he was the first ever character to feature using 2 action skills at once? And that's the significant takeaway I want to see in the gameplay in future games. And it actually kind of looks like Wonderlands might be delivering on that. Not necessarily 2 action skills at once, but between some of the magic spells plus action skills, it seems like we're still going to get some sort of interesting flavor of non-gun builds. Because even though there's a bazillion weapons in Borderlands, you know, we still want a bunch of ways to play the game without any weapons. At least a dozen or 2 dozen ways. And that's the other satisfying flavor that Zane brings to the table, sending out your drone and clone to do all the dirty work for you, zipping around with your unbreakable barrier and tanking all the enemies, holding an Unforgiven and one-shotting things with your Mantis cannon. We love ways in getting the game to just play itself for us. I remember getting away to AFK farm the Jabbermogwai boss because it respawns by itself. I used to AFK farm that with Zane's clone and Calm Cool Collected, and I would just love to see some of these elements show up in gameplay in the future. And finally, coming in at number 5, thing I loved about Borderlands 3 and absolutely see more are the takedowns. Now, at the beginning of Borderlands' life cycle, the devs or Randy or someone like that mentioned that there's no longer going to be any standalone raid bosses, and they're now introducing takedowns where the raid bosses will be. And well, you know, not everyone was a fan of having no standalone raid bosses, so, you know, Gearbox caved in, and they added Hemovorus the Invincible back with DLC 6. Honestly, I really think that should have been a part of the base game, and it was very disappointing that the base game had no raid boss in it, or the DLC. But, we're like, besides that point, the second half of that sentence was they are now adding takedowns, and Gearbox absolutely delivered on the takedowns. The Maliwan takedown is possibly the best piece of Borderlands content ever. I mean, it's easily in the top 3 or the top 5 because it's just some of the best single player shooting content in gaming ever, in single player games. The Guardian takedown was not as equally as amazing and a little rough around the edges once again compared to the Maliwan takedown, but it was absolutely an amazing piece of content as well. I posted an entire video on my exact thoughts on the Guardian takedown. Of course, you know, the problems with it and how it could be better, but also how it was already great. Like the combat puzzles with the crystals and not letting them go out. I actually think that is a fantastic mechanic to add into a takedown, and I want to see more stuff like that. But between both takedowns, we can really get ideas of what great, amazing pacing, like I mentioned, the combat puzzles, hordes of enemies, and bosses with some awesome mechanics to add into video games. I absolutely hope to God that Wonderlands has more takedowns than Borderlands 3 did, but especially if Borderlands 4 ever comes out, I really hope there are whole seasons of takedowns that come out. Like, I honestly think more takedowns should have came out in Borderlands 3, but, you know, I always wondered if COVID happening in 2020, because I know Gearbox wasn't all at the workplace. Like, did they ever have a third takedown planned and COVID slowed them down, they couldn't put it out? Or did they only have the 2 planned? If they only ever had the 2 planned, that's a bit disappointing. I really wish to just see more because it's such awesome content. Maybe about 3 to 5 for future Borderlands games. By the way, can we just mention the amazing mechanics of the Wotan and Scourge fights? The Scourge fight is slightly a little bit long, but both of these fights show how to use immunity phases in bossing. Giving the player something to do while the immunity is happening, it has to be fun and engaging enough, which Wotan and Scourge both definitely are. Wotan only uses slight immunity, just basically to interrupt your DPS, and he just changes positions, puts up his defenses, and a new horde of enemies as well, to make it a little bit harder to hit him directly. And it's a very fun way to do an immunity phase. You're not just standing there waiting around for 30 seconds like one other boss in the game. You're actually doing stuff in between, or they're just very short immunity phases just to break up your DPS a little bit. And Scourge with the giant diadems, summonings, and his phases able to be interrupted by the diadems themselves is a really cool twist to immunity phases. Although I will say there's a way to cheese Scourge with his own diadems, and you can actually just destroy him without your own damage and just his diadems, and that part kind of sucks. But the whole gameplay mechanic of his diadems coming out, and then you have to shoot one to interrupt his immunity phase, that's all really awesome. You know, killing raid bosses should require your build to put out enough DPS to take them down with no extra help from the environment. Also, Scourge teleporting you to fight mini mobs on the map is a pretty cool twist as well. And those are the top 5 things I love about Borderlands 3. Be sure to comment down below what things you love and what you want to see in future games. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel, because I will be posting Wonderlands content coming soon in about a month from now. So, see you guys in the next one. I'm out.